Welcome back to the Dharma Dank podcast, episode 6. I am Dharma Dank, and on this episode, I wanted to make it kind of a origin story episode, give you a little origin about who I am, where I come from, and how I have some sort of authority, maybe, and wisdom. And I like to, leave it up to you whether I have authority or not by finding out, do you have authority? Sorry, I don't mean to puzzle you in the beginning, but I'm sort of the guru killer, anti-guru type, spiritual leader type person. So might not fit the boxes that you're used to, because I'm also not necessarily Buddhist, sort of a deconstructionist when it comes to spirituality. I find it more constructive to try to be an alchemist, where you apply your spirituality into this world and see how far you can take it, for fun though, not for any dark things like that. And the first time I sort of tapped into, seeing beyond the veil was at the age of 3, when I had a realization that most people have in their 20s, where you realize your parents don't know what's going on and that they might just be kids pretending to be adults because there are no adults in the room. And this happened because I had an infection in my adenoid, and I had to be helicoptered to a hospital and just barely survived. Had this procedure done, and my first memories are of puking blood at night in a hospital room into a yellow plastic bin, and tubes in my arms, feeling woozy and a lot of pain. And I didn't think this was weird because this is all I knew. This is my first string of consciousness memories, and I thought, okay, I guess this is life. I didn't have a frame of reference to know that this was bad at all. And then my dad would visit me, and one day he comes over. He's like, "Hey, you want anything? I'll get you anything you want." And I'm just sort of like, "What? Give me anything I want? What the fuck is he talking about?" I'm not used to that, right? But he's so desperate to give me anything I want that it kind of starts to freak me out, realizing how desperate he is to give me a gift that doesn't make sense to me. So I go, "Okay, sure, Ghostbuster walkie-talkies, And he goes out and he comes back with regular ass walkie-talkies, and because he's an immigrant, he doesn't know what he's doing. So I look at the walkie-talkies and I go, "Thanks, Dad. It's exactly what I wanted," And I lied to him that it was the right thing, and it gave him relief, and he was happy. And then that's when I realized they don't know what they're doing. And maybe that sounds good, but it sucks. It actually sucks to know that when you're 3, because it makes you feel extremely vulnerable, and that you're being, raised in a clown show. You realize all your aunts and uncles, they don't know what they're talking about. Mostly, they're just stumbling along, figuring it out as they go along, just like you are as a child. So I was terrified of a lot of stuff. And I would have nightmares all the time, and night terrors and sleep paralysis, and I would see ghosts all the time as a child, and I hated it. It was very hard. And also around that time, I would have these dreams of this old couple taking me to the park, hanging out with me as a child. And, one day my mom showed me a photo of her dead parents that died a year before I was born. And I was like, yeah, those are the people that take me to the park. And I wasn't messing around, but yeah, that was them, So they were visiting me in dreams and stuff. But later, I learned this trick about night terrors is if I imagine all the things that really occur as nightmares, if I imagine every single thing I can think of, it won't happen that night. And I can pre-game it, preload a bunch of awful nightmares, and it will prevent them from occurring, because dreams are really like a memory storage system. It's when you take all the days of events and you turn them into metaphors and images and things that don't make a lot of sense, but they are related to the events. Usually, if you look back on your dreams and you really break them down, you can almost piece together everything from the day before that led to the metaphor occurring in the dream. And that's why dreams are such a great tool of analysis to tap into your unconscious mind that therapists use, because you are every character in your dream. Think about that, right? And because dreams are so unrealistic and don't follow logic, usually you don't lie about them or change the nature of them. And that's what allows a therapist to see you more holistically, more authentically, without you trying to color in how they're perceiving of you, which is what people usually do when they talk about themselves. And that's why dreams are a great tool. And this goes the same way with tarot, because tarot is also using imagery and metaphor to tap into something deeper into your unconscious mind, to get some stuff out of there. And that's why it's so effective. I think it's as effective as dream analysis and a great tool, tapping into the unconscious and helping a person like see themselves in new ways. It's a tool, that you empower. So with the night terrors, I also learned when I was a little kid that you can not necessarily get killed in a dream, right? Like no matter how scary it is, it won't kill you. Knowing this, and I probably learned that from like Nightmare on Elm Street or something, I don't know. But knowing this, I, like when they were fighting back, you know what I'm saying? Whenever I got into sleep paralysis, I would let myself stay there and relax into it. So, it's definitely terrifying when it happens, when you can't move your body. It's like your body goes to sleep before your conscious mind. And when you try to move your body, you can't because your body's asleep and your mind is not. So it's like horrifying, but if you can relax into it and let yourself just be with it, I found that I would just sink right into a lucid dream, and I would be lucid. And I would also do that for astral projection, all this sort of stuff, and have adventures and here and there, I was always continually speaking to ghosts and spirits and playing with kids in the neighborhood like that. But as we grew older and puberty kicked in, everyone started to get cruel, as people do, more cruel, and separating into different race groups and genders and all this stuff. Whereas like before that, it wasn't that big a deal. It wasn't as important. But it becomes more important as hormones are kicking in. You're scared about how different you are and you want to fit in. And you're scared about being alone, even though you're not alone. You're connected to everything. And that's sort of the illusion that you feel alone. But at the time, I was also going to church. And I understood the theology behind the Christ and the teachings. And I had a very strong understanding of it, very young. But it completely confused me how it seemed no one in the congregation at church lived the way Christ was living. None of them, and it was kind of rendering me dumbstruck as a child. I didn't understand it. And I was starting to lose faith actually as a result, because I would see just the rampant hypocrisy. And then I knew, like, if you're a good Buddhist your whole life, you go to hell. Like, I didn't understand. Is that how it works? And pastors could not answer this question with any like good answers, I just felt like that what kind of God is that? So, and around that time I had a vision in a meditation around 15, where I saw like the true nature of reality, kind of, where I was in this like realm of pure energy and light, and I saw a tree in the distance and I knew I could fly to it, so I flew to it. As it got closer and closer, the tree grew, and there was a hole in it, and it was huge, right? And go inside, it's like a home, and inside was a sphere of light and energy, and these two beings of energy came out around it, and they told me this is the afterlife. And I'm like, great. And they're like, you can do anything, right? I was like, yeah, I can do anything. And they asked me like, isn't it lovely? I'm like, yeah, it's great, And then I said like, I don't get it. What's the point? What's the point of all this? Why am I in the body then, And they said, well, if you're always energy, you would only know energy. You would just be this energy being, and you would do nothing. It would be nothingness. But you're in a body, so you can be contained. And once you're contained and then released, you have a multitude more possibilities of how to exist. Your ability to have reality is just tremendously increased. And the point of being contained in the body is to develop your personality, to see how far you can take this reality, to alchemize if you can. But it's about finding your voice. That's the point. And you have to be contained to do that. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. It's just like live your life fully, basically. And at the time I lost faith, because it didn't fit with what the Christians were telling me. But I was always a humanist, regardless. It was just innate for me, even if it seemed naive and foolish and corny. I still remained a humanist, and I felt a lot of love towards strangers and stuff. And I studied existentialism at the age of 18. I started learning what existentialism was, and I was always sort of an existentialist to begin with anyway. But to quickly sum down the extensive philosophy of existentialism, it's basically the idea is that there's only this present moment. Past and the future are just conceptions of the mind, and it's how you live now and authentically now that defines you, and what you do defines you. And it means you have total responsibility for how you live, which can be freaky, but it also gives you infinite possibility of how you can change everything. That's sort of the gist of it. But it's not technically a humanist philosophy. However, I put a humanist bent on it, and I didn't like how transactional everyone seemed. I really missed that idyllic world before puberty where we were all just hanging and everything was cool and there was no conniving. And as I was 18, I was just constant conniving and cruelty and malaise and hopelessness and jadedness. And I was like, all right, that exists. That seems to be what the world is, but I define reality now because I'm an existentialist. So I'm going to commit to being a feminist. And I'm going to commit to, protesting, and then I'm going to commit to radical non-transactionalism, where I do wild acts of kindness for strangers, again, nothing in return. Because if we are all one, then doing something for a stranger makes complete sense. And that is what I knew to be true as an existentialist, even without religion or spirituality, was that everything is happening at once in this one moment. That's all there is. So we're all one, right? And I decided that I'm going to choose to create a world where there is kindness for strangers for no reason, even though the whole world is telling me that's not a thing, right? That's the underlying subversive message behind this capitalist culture. And then I helped like hundreds of people move for free. I've helped like over 100 people get jobs doing cover letter work, resume work, interview coaching. And I've counseled artists and different people in different industries and helped a lot of them get their dream jobs. I helped at least 3 people become the highest levels of their industry. And this was all for fun, just because I knew how to help them see their story differently and inspire them enough to go for it. Because I was told you can achieve anything you apply yourself to. My mother always told me that, only to discover like 20 years later that she meant I can do anything I apply myself to, because genetically I have her bloodline or whatever. Not everyone. I thought it was everyone, so I misunderstood that message. And I effectively helped so many people just to prove I could do it for nothing, because everyone tells me I'm stupid for it, and I'm just saying, no, fuck you, I'm doing it anyway. And the more I did this, though, the more I felt secure in myself and who I am. I started to feel like it defined me more, and I was no longer feeling like I needed to be loved necessarily. That was the funny thing. I didn't notice this right away, but I realized I didn't have the yearning to need to be loved, because I had that before. I was always like crushing too hard and wanting to be in a romantic relationship, somewhat of a serial monogamous. But then as I was like single and doing this, I learned that I was like becoming love. And when you become love, you don't need love anymore, because you are love. And then love happens more naturally, actually. Once you become love, you attract that. You attract what you need. But I didn't know that. This was an accident, And as I became love, I was meditating too at that time. And I would go to free meditation things with a bunch of very hippy-dippy spiritual people. Even though I wasn't, I would join them. And I learned that like about 30 minutes to 40 minutes in, I would start to have these full-blown visuals. I would see people, ideas. It was like a waking dream, sort of. And I could just witness it and take it in and get all this stuff out of it and then come out of it. But it took me like 30, 40 minutes. And it was brutal getting that far in the beginning. Honestly, it was so brutal meditating for long periods. Even 5 minutes was killing me in the beginning. And then I would share that this was happening with the group. And I could see like no one else was going through this kind of, in a way. Like not a lot of people were experiencing that. And they were like, awestruck by it, and I'm just like, wow, but I haven't been doing this as long as you guys, So as I'm doing this and coaching people and counseling and to like great success, and I'm being a filmmaker, I'm writing all these creative stories and teaching infinite creativity and doing it, making projects. I meditated again. I had this crazy vision of a cosmic Buddha, and it told me it's the Buddha of the multiverse. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's interesting. I'm very creative that is. So I thought it was my imagination. And it told me, every time you almost died on this earth, because you almost died a bunch of times, right? It's like you shouldn't have survived, right? It's because every time you almost died, you did die on another earth. There are versions of you doing better than you, worse than you. There's countless worlds where you do not exist. But I'm keeping you alive for a reason. You are here for a reason. And I was like, what? I was like, I don't get it. What's the reason? And it told me like, well, spirituality has failed. Buddhism has failed. All religions have failed because we can only go so far. And there's like a giant segment of the population that will not go for it, What would you do to help spread teachings of love and unity consciousness beyond religion and spirituality? And I was like, I don't know. I would use fiction, I said. I would use TV and film projects to inspire people that they can do anything, and inspire people into love and unity consciousness through a lie, because fiction is a lie that people believe in with all their heart. So that's how you get an atheist to take in the Dharma, by presenting it as a lie and them knowingly taking it as a lie. And this cosmic Buddha was like, correct, that's great answer. And I was like, wonderful, and then it said like, are you ready to be, a prophet? Are you ready to gain tons of infinite wisdom? I was like, no, actually, you shouldn't do that, because I'm almost an atheist. I'm not the one. I'm not the right person. Like, are you sure? You're just an atheist. You're an atheist that helps a bunch of people for nothing. And I'm like, yeah, atheists do that, And then it said like, are you sure? And doesn't it feel good? I was like, yeah, it feels great, but. And I said, but someone else can use this. I don't need this. I figured a lot of stuff out. There's other people on earth that they would really be helped by having this knowledge and wisdom. And then the Buddha was like, that's why I'm picking you, because you're saying that, I was like, oh, come on, give me a break. And then it gave me like a test. It showed me all these other prophets and how they failed. And I had to answer all these questions. I kept answering everything correctly, but in a Willy Wonka-esque way where I didn't realize I was answering right, because I didn't want it. And that's probably why it was choosing me in some ways. So after this crazy incident, I was like Mary Poppins for like 6 months, just showing people new ways to look at life in a happy-go-lucky way and stuff, in a playful and not, harmful manner or whatever. And then I went to Korea for the second time in my life for 2 months. First time, I went twice. The second time I went, and both times something incredible happened. But this is the second time. I go there, and I'm being Mary Poppins all over Korea, because Korea is very conservative, so it's a huge deal. But I'm not threatening people at the same time. And I thought I was worried they would hate me, but they actually loved it, because who doesn't like getting Mary Poppins, right? So in Korea, I go to sleep, and I'm driven to a temple while I sleep, and I wake up and I feel all this energy in there. And I'm like, where are we? They're like, we're at a temple. I was like, what? Because I had been driven to palaces before. I didn't feel that energy. I felt dark things, but at the temple, I felt good, right? And I was like, I didn't know though it was a temple. I thought it was just another palace. So we go in, and it's a big ass monastery. It's like one of the World Heritage sites in Korea. And then I go into this one pagoda or whatever, and there's a Buddha there. It's the Amitabha, Buddha of compassion. I'm like, okay. Or it's a Buddha, and I'm like, great, cool. And then I see another Buddha, and it looks like this. It has his finger, holding his finger like this. And I'm like, holy shit. I just know instantly that's the Buddha I saw in my vision. And I'm like, what the fuck? What's the name of this Buddha? It says Vairocana Buddha, cosmic Buddha of wisdom, or Buddha of cosmic wisdom, pure light Buddha, right? I tell my family there, I'm like, look, I had these visions of this Buddha, and this is the Buddha. Like, it was a multiversal Buddha. I don't know what the fuck is going on, but I know this is the one. And then I Google Vairocana Buddha. And it said the first sutra that mentions the Vairocana says, I, the Vairocana, sit upon a throne, upon a lotus flower with 1,000 petals, and each petal has 100 million worlds on it, and each world has its own Shakyamuni Buddha, which to me is clearly a reference to the multiverse. And I'm just like, how the fuck? Then I learned that in Buddhist scholarship, the Vairocana is not seen as a multiversal Buddha, but it's pretty clear to me and anyone that does even a little bit of research that it very much seems like a multiversal Buddha. So this entity I never heard of before is the one that reached out to me, and now I've identified it. And I've spoken to different monks from 3 different sects about these visions, and they seem to corroborate that I might be having real visions. Like, they don't think I'm just delusional. They believe I'm having these visions, and there may be something to it. So that's like the main message came to spread, is that you're not supposed to be here. And the reason I'm activated today is because maybe 2,000 years ago, you bring up multiverse and only like the highest level monks know what you're talking about. But today you say multiverse, a bunch of 8-year-olds in a room understand what you're saying because of Marvel films, right? And that's why I'm activated now for this age to teach the Dharma again through the Vairocana. And this also means that when the Buddha, was reaching his final enlightenment, Mara approached and asked, like, who is your witness to your enlightenment? How dare you say you're enlightened, And he touches the earth. Famously, he touches the earth in meditation, and the earth says, I am a witness. It calls out. And then Mara, like, freaks out and disappears. And that's when Buddha reaches his Buddhahood. But like now, knowing that there is an infinite multiverse, that means he's touching your earth. When he touched the earth and it spoke, that was your earth, because this is our Buddha, right? And there's other Buddhas on other earths. So this is your earth, you know? And now I do like more and more esoteric practices, because the more I let myself believe in these esoteric practices, the more I've seen them come to fruition and actually happen. And I did this also by accident, because I've been a storyteller, writing fiction forever, using boredom to get into that state, because boredom is really undervalued. Boredom is what made me start writing comic book stories in church, because I couldn't understand the sermon that was in Korean, right? Because I didn't speak Korean anymore. And in order to not just like feel so bored out of my mind because I had undiagnosed ADHD, I would take the church photocopied pamphlet out and take the little tiny pencil from the pew, and I would just make up comic book stories that some of them to this day are still good, right? That I wrote when I was 7, 8. I'll write the church plays in Christmas and the plays at Bible camp, but somehow, and then when they would meet for Bible study, the adults, I would get together with the kids in a room and improvise ghost stories and horror stories in the darkness, and then freak everyone out. You know, it became something so easy to channel because I was so bored and I had to entertain myself. So boredom is a way to release your creativity, honestly, because you got to entertain yourself. And I think a lot of us are afraid to confront that because, you know, you're afraid maybe you're not good enough, you know, fear of failure, fear of success, but let yourself be bored because it's all good, honestly. I love seeing anyone's art, but you got to be bored. If you're like half in social media trying to make art, it's just not going to push as far as it can. And the true boredom really pushes the boundaries. So like get fucking bored, you know, until it just starts to emerge and you know it, you feel it because it's so strong. It's not just like a fun idea that sounds good. It's like something beyond you that you know could be potentially fantastic. You get there with boredom. So, you know, there's a place for that. And boredom is when I had my first or second major enlightenment in Korea the first time I went when I was 12, which I'll explain in another episode. I guess I'll explain it now. So also when I was 12, I was sent to Korea for 2 months, one summer. And I was so bored when I got there. I had these books that I read, and I was so bored I would study how they were written, right? I was so bored, and I had so jet lagged that I would exercise every night. And I was so bored I would climb a mountain every morning and reach the top and see the dragonflies flying over the tall grass because I was so bored out of my mind. My grandparents felt bad for me, so they sent me away to summer camp. And I met a bunch of Koreans, and it was fun. But the only time you had water you can drink was after every meal, because there wasn't like available water around. It was like late 90s in Korea. It wasn't as wealthy as it is today. It's in the countryside or whatever. And you'd have to wait after the meal, and they would wait online and give you a little piece of paper that you could pop open into a cup, and you can drink as much water as you can when it was your turn. But you have to drink fast. There's a bunch of people waiting for you. And that was it. But at the end of the night though, in the dorm rooms, there'd be like 30 kids in bunks, multiple rooms. There'd be one giant jug and one metal bowl for 30 kids in the hallway. And I was like, that's disgusting. I'm not drinking that. But by the third day, I was so thirsty that I didn't care anymore. And my body like picked me up and came out into that hallway with the bright fluorescent lighting. And I just like a zombie just went to the bowl and poured the water in. And I drank the water. I was like, oh my God, it's the best water I've ever had in my life. What the fuck? Oh my God. I thought this was gross and I was depriving myself of this delicious water because I was fucking dumb American, you know? And I realized my mind affected the way this water was perceived, and my mind was affecting my experience of reality. How I was framing was affecting the reality of reality, right? Later, I found out this is the same, it's a very similar story to a very famous sage who reached his enlightenment because of a cup of water from Korea named Wonhyo. And I was told, like, I remind people of this monk. I didn't even know this story until I was 18 when I first heard about it, because I was telling people this story since I was 12. And I was like, nah, I'm not like this guy, right? But after I had my second vision, second time in Korea, then I also looked up this guy Wonhyo, right? Because I'm like, okay, what's up with this guy, right? Turns out he was never a monk. I thought he was a monk. Like me, he wasn't a monk. And once he reaches enlightenment, he realized he doesn't have to go travel to find the authentic texts. That enlightenment can be found from within, because you are able to change all of reality with your mind. So he decided to never become a monk and become a layperson and spread the Dharma to common people. And he was known for drinking, and he was known for dancing, and he would have sex and all this shit and hang out with regular people. I did all the same stuff. And he was cleverly able to unify a bunch of contradictory Buddhist texts with really, really insightful analysis. I've been unifying all religion to tell the one truth to atheists without forcing them to believe in anything. We have a very similar mission. I also dance a lot. I was dancing last night, hardcore. So I didn't realize we were very similar, more similar than I could have dreamed. And now I also had a vision of his death, and that was fine. But I don't like research the shit out of him because I'm a different person. We're not the same person. I think reincarnation is more multiple people throughout space-time, piercing through the veil of space-time, living the same energy signature simultaneously. I think that's what's kind of going on, actually. So I think everything is actually happening in one moment. So when you do similar things to other people and it like repeats in a pattern, you're just doing it all at the same time. And some people you're way more connected to than others. So like, the story The Egg by Andy Weir, the idea is that we're all actually one person reincarnating throughout space-time, experiencing every life together. It's kind of like that. I think that's actually the truth of things. At least that's what I've seen. And again, take everything I say with a grain of salt, because these are just opinions and ideas that I derive from lived experience. And the things I've learned from coaching others, and they just like draw upon each other. Like everyone I learn from by helping them adds to the base of knowledge where it just keeps growing and growing and growing with every new person I help. And I believe, sacred knowledge is collective and must go back to the collective in a free flow. And that's mainly why I make this podcast and do the spiritual content on TikTok and distill it and ground it and make it more accessible, but also more bespoke. Because if you have to worship anything, if you have to, worship your own highest self. It's within you. It's not something that's out of reach or you will ever feel as an opposition to you, which you'll feel with something outside of yourself, but it's in you. You might not always be there, but it's there anytime you want it to be. And make your own magic, because you are the one that empowers your tools. Your tools do not have power over you. They don't have your power. Meaning, make your own card systems, make your own tarot decks, pull decks or whatever. Make your own mudras and, motions and mantras, because it's all made up. It's all made up by people, all building tools from the unconscious place. And you can do it too, like Hilma af Klint, the painter from Sweden, who would channel these amazing paintings by tapping into meditation and her unconscious and potentially influencing the modernists, but without getting any of the credit. She did it in isolation. She didn't need others, right? And I'm tapping into ancient knowledge. So, since that vision with the multiversal Buddha, I get downloads of more teachings and concepts. And I'll say things and monks will tell me like, oh yeah, that's that sutra and that's that sutra. I'm like, I don't know any sutras. There's the shit that's just coming to me. And I develop techniques that are famous and ancient, and the techniques that are my own, but they're all just coming out, they're emerging out of a channeled state. And you can all do this. And I'll teach you everything I know about all the magic I know. But I think part of magic is realizing like you're creating reality, you're shaping it, and you can control your placebo effect and make it work for you. Like why not, right? And just try it and see for yourself what happens. See, how these different techniques work. The main breath technique I teach is Tonglen, where you breathe in the horror and exhale love and light. Breathe in the horror and suffering of the world and exhale loving compassion, right? And what I'm saying is it makes you an engine of change, and it unifies the energies. It removes the binary between good and bad, because when you only take in light and you exhale what doesn't serve you, you're saying you don't want one and you want the other. Whereas this is you take in what you don't want, you exhale what you do want, and you're unifying the two. You're leaning to that contradiction. And the reason I developed it, I have a logical reason, was because I was tired of listening to people talking about love and light and just take it in and exhale what doesn't serve you and all your first. I was like, no, you guys are creating this fucking spiritual bypassing binary. So I did the opposite. And I channeled this technique where you meditate with other versions of yourself at once, because if the multiverse is infinite and there's other versions of you, then the moment you imagine you're meditating with other versions of yourself, it's happening because it's infinite. It's inevitable. So knowing this, you can get into a meditative state and meditate with versions of yourself in like a mandala congregation and transfer energy and wisdom of many worlds onto your own, and transfer Tonglen energy onto this earth. Because every time you do that breathing, when you breathe in the Hora, exhale love, you're cultivating energy. It's like building energy. You can use this energy, move it around, or hold it, or whatever. But I think, as far as I know, it's the most powerful energy source there is, until I learn something more powerful. But I have found it has many transformative effects on mind and body. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, my origins, and when I'm making TikTok and stuff and this podcast to spread the Dharma as much as I can in a grounded, street level way that's accessible to everyone. It doesn't require membership fees, things like that. You can always support the channel. We sell merch. We got t-shirts. Share the podcast, TikTok, share the links, share the videos. That really helps. That's pretty much, we'll sell like t-shirts and merch and books and things like that, but no courses or anything. Because I do think there's like, I wanted it to all be accessible, because I used to counsel one-on-one all the time, but I don't have the time to do it anymore. And the more people I'm meeting, the less time I have, right? So I need to scale this information up. Digitally is the way to do it, right? Because digitally I can scale it infinitely. So I'm trying to regurgitate everything I know into these videos to just leave something behind for everyone, just for fun. Because I help most of the people for free. So why not help people I don't know more for free? It makes more sense to me than the privileged few I happen to have interacted with. And I believe sacred knowledge comes from the collective, must go back to the collective in a free flow. And that's really what this is all about. But yeah, you can support by, pushing it out, merch, things like that. Because it would be cool to do this full time. I am auditioning though, making monologues for acting. I write TV and film and stuff. So I would love to get in as an actor, writer, TV, filmmaker, stuff like that. Do it all, because of that thing about fiction, spreading the Dharma. That's the bigger goal. And that's fun, because I do love acting. I'll talk about that, directing and acting and filmmaking. Maybe I'll do that in the next episode, because I think that's a lot of interesting stuff. And that's an art form that should stay thriving and alive. I know AI has kind of been threatening the film industry and, screwing with people, and then making all these people that don't know anything about filmmaking feel like they can do it. But there's nothing quite like filmmaking. It's a very unified art form of collaborators. And alchemy happens all the time. You're trying to reproduce reality. So it's a lot of fun. I could tell you about that whole journey too. But yeah, that's it for this episode. A little bit of the origin story. I left a lot out, of course, but hope you liked it, and I'll see you again next week. Remember, everyone, all is love. Love is all.